Добре, друзі, всім привіт. Ми починаємо. Давайте я почну з такого дисклеймера. Насправді це вперше ми в історії Rhythm Bureau робимо щось в подібному форматі. Тому не судіть дуже строго. Я думаю, що це така перша спроба у нас буде. Сьогодні ми поговоримо про те, як як мати кураторство над музичним лейблом, про те, які можуть бути проблеми в процесі, про те, як може змінюватися підхід протягом історії лейблу. І у нас сьогодні 3 учасники. Якщо ви не проти, I'll switch to English right away and we'll continue this discussion in English, right? So we have 3 very different labels tonight, and we have Dennis, aka Garçon, representing Amenthia Records. We have Mariana Berezovska representing Standard Deviation. And my name is Igor Glushko. I represent Rhythm Bureau. I didn't want this to be a very thought-through lecture of sorts. I wanted this to be a live discussion. So I'll kick it off with a very simple question that I hope other participants will help me answer and kick off this discussion with. So what do you think is the initial idea that actually triggers the creation of the label? Can you talk about what was the case for your labels respectively? So when did you decide that you needed to launch the label, and what was the underlying reason for that?
So I would say in our case, I run the label with Dominic, a good friend of mine called Agonis. And we were longtime friends, and we were DJing already. He was producing music. And I guess in our case, it was just like a next step kind of thing, very natural. He had a lot of tracks that we thought could be ready for a release. And that's how we initially had the idea, and then kicked off with the first Amenthia release in 2015.
For us, it's very different, because the story of a label is, for me, it's like really very much like this. That's how people start a label, when they have music that needs to be released and they understand their circle. And for us, the label is a part of the club, K41, Kirillivska 41. And it was also launched as one of the side projects of the club, and it was not me, so it's not my label. I'm the head of label now. It was different group of people, and I've been running it now for 2 years, and the label exists since 2020. And the idea was that there is so much beautiful music around us, and there is such a big community, and also that although we were more focused on house and techno as a club, as clubs often are, but there was so much more other stuff going on around, and it was very interesting, and it was different from what you can hear in the club, and that's why it's also called Standard Deviation from the club sound. And having all these people around, my colleagues said, okay, we need a label now. But yeah, it's also been like the identity has been transitioning, and it has changed a lot, because it works, used to work first of all as a multimedia platform as well, because we release some video work, we do publishing as well, like all merch ideas are also related to this, so it's more of a platform for different media. But now we're more focused on releasing music, and that's also what we plan for the future, but I think we'll still talk about this.
I think it's interesting, and actually one of my next questions would be how the idea and the approach towards the label evolves with time, right? And you mentioned that I think the intention was to release something different from like the regular club music, right? And I think with Amenthia, it's also, it's not the typical kind of club music, right? So can you talk a little bit more about that? Why was the selection of music initially exactly like that? And maybe how the idea of the label evolved with time?
You still have to tell us about Rhythm Bureau.
I will.
Thanks. Yeah. Maybe you can start.
I guess because we were already DJing and kind of had our sound that we were playing as DJs. Obviously, we were inspired mostly by this and like in general club music. But I think with the first release of Amenthia, like if you compare it to the rest of the catalog today, it still feels a little bit different because the initial idea was to put out a little homage to Detroit techno. That was for both Dominic and me a big inspiration, and also Dominic was like quite young. I think he was 17 or 18 when he started to produce these tracks, and I guess back then, so that was maybe 2006, 2013. Sorry. For him as a producer, I think it was also really important to get this music out. How it evolved was in a sense that we had our sound that we DJ'd and stuff, and then of course all our friends that are part of the label as well that were very inspiring for us and also helped like shaped the music that we wanted to release. And I don't think there was necessarily an idea to be different or dare to be different or whatever, but I guess it was just like the music we were surrounded to. And in terms of evolution, I think it was, just mostly friends around us that helped shape it a lot, especially the group Varuna. I think they were really important for the sound of Amenthia, or how we are maybe perceived as well. It was club music, but also had a lot of like experimental inspirations to it as well. But I think this focus was still kind of on the dance floor. Yeah.
And a question. What was the question? Exactly
How has the approach to the label evolved with
Okay.
time? And because you started with this initial idea of deviation from regular club music, and do you consider the approach to be the same today, or has it also incorporated other ideas with time?
When the label started, there were different. There were many artists around the club, and they were pitching also ideas of making something more multidisciplinary. And us as a club and also as the label, we work a lot with very specific visual artists as well. So we try to connect music and artwork, and if possible, also some video works. Now we also go into performances. Me at that time, I was in Berlin. I was running a music magazine called Borsch, and that's why we started collaborating as well, because the label wanted also to publish some zines, and I was editing them, so there was kind of a very organic collaboration. But also, like, there was the time, I think, very defining for Kyiv, because it was the time of COVID, and when the clubs around Europe were closed and many ravers and DJs were coming here because it was open. So there was like really a momentum for this, and that's why there was a lot of input coming for this more multi-disciplinary things, but also really nice, good music. And this way we had like these first two releases that were super successful. They were Diden and Omon Breaker, and then Nene Ha and Nene H and Sasha Polychain. But around that, these were the EPs, and around that we were building up more like experimental things. And now, since I joined the label, I'm more into experimental music in general. But we also thought about this for like a year now, that okay, like we have a club and we have to bring the sound closer to the club, so we're working on this now. I don't think that this has like, it will be a very dramatic change, but you always think of the label as like, okay, who is it for? Not only who we want to release because we like the music, but also like who are people around us, what they will listen to. If we want new people around around us, what's interesting for them. So this is a kind of a platform for us to connect to the audience, not just to release people we think are interesting, because for me that would be like very different direction as well. That is completely more experimental and noisy, but here we think more about the community around the club.
Before I proceed describing the background for Rhythm Bureau, I have a follow-up question for you, if you don't mind. So, what do you think it takes for an artist to get released on Standard Deviation? Because you described the first releases, and I think it's my perception of the idea. Maybe it's wrong, but you can correct me. The intention was to release like a Ukrainian artist and an international artist together, right? Now the approach has slightly changed, I guess, but how do you, like, which criteria an artist has to meet in order to be given a chance to release on the label?
Actually, thanks for mentioning this, because I forgot to mention that label has always been like this bridge between European artists, international artists, and Ukrainian artists. And this way, we wanted to make Ukrainian artists also more visible, but also introduce this sounds of international artists in Ukraine. So that was the initial approach. But since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, our goal was more like, okay, let's support people who actually stayed in Ukraine, who are Ukrainian artists. Let's see what we can do with them. And that developed into really nice projects, but they are really more multidisciplinary, like video, audiovisual work. And now, again, we are coming back to this approach that will be connecting two artists, international and Ukrainian ones. What it takes, really, like releasing and making music and making yourself visible, because we really,
regardless of a particular style, right?
I mean, it's still like it's interesting club music, or like what is called left field music, left field techno, or it could be now like maybe I'll introduce it, like we are releasing Native Outsiders release, and it's a lot of kind of like split dubstep, and so it's not techno, definitely not. But what it takes for an artist is to keep kind of making music, keeping the SoundCloud visible, and also like reaching out to us. So I think that's what it takes, but it's not limited to techno. But of course, I think that as many labels, even though it's not completely techno or house, it has its flavor and its taste. So it has to appeal to myself and the team. But I think you can find it out from like when you listen to our parties, what's going on there. So if it's something like this, then it will work. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple words on how we started Rhythm Bureau, because the project generally, Rhythm Bureau, we run it, the three of us, myself, Vera, and Alex. But then when it comes to the label, I'm the person responsible for it. So I think like when it was launched initially, there were two main reasons for that. One was egocentric on my part. So like as a DJ, I wanted to have this platform to showcase the particular, not genre, but maybe the direction of music that I was into at the moment, and that I wanted to also play as a DJ. But at the same time, because both Vera and Alex were up and coming artists at the time, so like now they are more widely known internationally. But back then, I think they were only starting with their current artist names. Vera had a different artist name at the time, but regardless. So, and I think like it had two sides to it, right? So first, I wanted to have my label, call it like an egocentric thing or whatever. And second, I wanted to use this as a platform to help launch the careers of Alex and Vera. But with time, I think the idea evolved, because now I want to, with a couple of latest projects, I want to focus on a particular sound at the time, right? So like I released this ambient compilation a couple years ago called There Will Be Light. And the idea was, like ambient had its own revival, like as if it was the 90s again. But I noticed that if I wanted to compare the modern ambient to what was released in the 90s, I cannot
call most of the ambient stuff that is released today timeless, right? So, and I wanted, I know it kind of sounds pretentious, like I didn't want it to be like that, but I wanted to release the type of ambient that I wanted to be timeless, right? So, and the approach I took for this project, I contacted a bunch of different artists, both Ukrainian and international, and I described my idea. Like, and it's not an easy task to describe the sound with words, right? So, like, I basically how I approached it was I gave them positive criteria, like you try to reproduce that, like synth heavy, for instance, psychedelic, light percussions, or negative associations, like don't do that, like industrial drony stuff, you know, like something that sounds aggressive. And I also gave them the list of reference tracks that I felt like resonated with this specific sound that I had in mind. And I think like that approach worked, although like I wasn't sure it would turn out this way. So it was a very practical way of obtaining something that you wanted in terms of the sound, but again, like how do you describe sound, right? So, and now I'm preparing a different project that is actually being printed at the moment. It's also going to be a 2 LP compilation. This time with, like, for the lack of better term, deep breakbeat stuff, because I wanted to have something that is danceable, uh, and like broken beats always have this groovier flavor on the dance floor, but also wanted to be deeper in terms of I don't want I don't want it to be aggressive. I don't want it to be just stupid dance music, right? So I wanted, like, if you take MDMA at home and you want to listen to some music, so I want it to be like that, right? So I'm not encouraging anybody. That's just yeah. So yeah, like, and I think like my approach has changed slightly because now I'm focusing on a particular sound. Although I don't rule out the possibility that sometimes I will focus on giving the opportunity to a particular artist by releasing their stuff on the label, right? So yeah, my next question would be, and it's general, just asking for your opinion on that, right? So now that many tools are available, and to launch a label is now an easier task than it used to be, like, let's say 20 years ago, right? So Bandcamp didn't exist 20 years ago. And like, I think it's both blessing and a curse at the same time, because now these tools are becoming more widely available and more people are exposed to those, and more people can actually represent their creative side by that. But at the same time, it kind of removes the filter, right? So it's easier to just release anything. What do you think makes a label special now that it's actually easier to run it, like on paper? But what does it take for a label to be special?
Yeah, please start. I have to think.
It will be my opinion, right? So I came to the label publishing, music publishing industry already when all of these tools already existed. So I don't come from the era where you didn't have anything. But I always kind of think of my favorite labels, right? And how they started. And I think that rule number one is that you have to really trust yourself, like the story you just told us about, like, okay, I have this idea in mind, I want to make it happen, maybe it's not gonna work, but this will be your taste, like it will have your flavor in it. That's number one. And the second one is consistency, I think, for the label, because as soon as we kind of disappear because things are starting happening and changing, people like forget, because they lose attention, and you stop being so connected with them, right? So I think consistency, if somebody considers to release to make a label, tools are really out there, but it took me some time to also figure them out, to find them, to understand how it works, especially in Ukraine, like to speak about like music publishing and copyright, all these legal things like making a contract with an artist. It's a very new, unknown territory, but it's possible to make it. But I think you have to stay consistent and you have to like try to find your voice in it, because I think that 2 albums, they will not make a voice of a label. You know, you need to build up this flavor of what you represent, and a kind of a collection of things will make a label. That's yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing actually. Yeah, you said it perfectly. I guess consistency is a big part, I think, and also like you said, just if you believe in your sound and that's the sound you really wanna show to the world, then I think people should do it. And I think what's also nice about a label, especially being it a digital only release or even if it's records, that it more or less doesn't disappear. So it's also nice for people to discover it a few years later or whatever, and then maybe go back from the newer stuff to the older stuff, and maybe find inspiration in that as well, where they'll be like, oh yeah, that's like they have their sound and like it makes sense, and I really like what they do. And yeah, consistency is a big part. If you think about your favorite labels or whatever labels that has been around for a long time, you can tell it's a consistency. And also, even if a label that has been consistent for a really long time and suddenly they change directions, it also does something with you, like you immediately recognize it. But I think it's important that if you think you want to release something, then do it.
Just go for it, right? Let's talk more about those tools that are becoming available, right? So Bandcamp is kind of an obvious example, but is there anything else that you would recommend people who are maybe thinking about launching their label? What can help them to publish the music, right? What can help them reach the specific audience? Like, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is what format you choose to release it on. Obviously, with Bandcamp, it's easier in a sense that you can, have a release ready digitally and release it, which I think is a really cool thing. Or you do records where you might have more risks, especially financially. Like from our side, it was I think a mix of because when we first started, the first maybe 5 years, we didn't have a distributor because we thought it's maybe nice to get in touch directly with the people. With the
Was it always vinyl?
yes, yes, um, yeah. And then at some point we had help from the German label Giegling, because they distributed it themselves as well, and they had a really big network. Thank you, and offered help in a sense that they maybe took 1/4 of the records we pressed and helped us distribute it. And of course, that was a big deal for us in a sense that it was easier to spread it because they were already quite well known. And then after maybe 5 years, it was a bit hard because I did all of the packaging and like sending the records, and it was just too much of a hustle. So since a few years, we're working with Clone now. Yeah. Besides of the distributing part, I guess, like you said, Bandcamp obviously is a tool, and maybe compared to maybe 10 years ago, it can, especially with like the social media, it can also happen way quicker. But also it depends on the. I think a big part is also maybe the local community you have, that you have a following in your city or your region that you are, and again, if you're consistent and believe in the sound you're wanted to release, I think it's happening somehow.
I wanted to ask you, how did you manage to do it without the distributor first? Like, so did you focus just on the local scene, like for selling the records, or how did you make it happen at all?
No, we basically just contacted the, like we were, yeah, exactly. We were just checking the record shops we wanted to reach out to, got their email, sent them an email.
Wow,
Had like
that's
the
impressive.
had like the press kit ready and the snippets and everything, and yeah, most of them
Do you
actually.
think this is still possible nowadays? Like,
I think so. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, obviously, maybe it changed. It's always hard to tell. Some people say like vinyl is dead, and then you think all the record stores have gone and all the online shops have gone. But if I actually think about it, it's still going quite well. So I guess if you feel like doing that, I can recommend just like reach out to the record stores you wanna, because also record stores, especially like the physical ones, also most of them have like a sound they kind of want to showcase. So I think it's fair enough to try.
If you don't mind me asking, how many copies did you print with initial releases?
So until the 6th record, we always did 500.
Oh wow! And
Yes.
they got sold out.
They always, most of them sold out.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Mm.
And that was between 2015 and 2019, and then the pandemic helped started, and then that changed a lot, I think, for labels that released records.
Hypothetically speaking, like if you had the distributor from release number 1, do you think you would obtain the very same result, or maybe your approach like more like personal by contacting the shops directly? Maybe it helped actually get these releases sold out.
No, I don't necessarily think so. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, for the shop, it was basically that they didn't have to go through a. I mean, it was a mix. Some shops didn't really like it to go directly with the labels because usually they can just like get a bunch of records from distributors, and then you have these extra labels that want to sell directly. So for some it worked, for some it didn't. But yeah, it's hard to tell how it would have been different.
Also, at the same time, like Clone, like we distribute with Clone now. Our third record, which is Nastya Vogan and Face Fatale, Transition Territory, is a great record. But we tried for the first time to just distribute with Clone, and we are unknown label for them, right? And they have so many labels. So now it's said that it's much better to work with a small distributor that would do this kind of work for you. Contact the shops, like introduce you, and Clone, for us, we don't sell that much with them because they're like, yeah, you guys are a new label, like people don't know you, so obviously they don't make this personal introduction about us, and we sell better online and in the club, so it's better this way. But now, for instance, I wanted to go back a little bit like to this industry aspect. I mean, I had to learn. I'm also wondering how you learn about things. Maybe like how did you learn how to do things? Did you just ask people? How, like, okay, we start a label. Like, where do we print? What is distribution? Like, where do I go? Like, I don't know. How was it back then?
We
for
had
you?
a little bit of help, or like older people around
Older
us that
people.
we could help, but also we just figured out a lot by ourselves, or kind of knew a little bit how it's done more or less, but also is on the way was more like
Yeah,
learning
it's
by doing as well.
exactly. And
Which was fun.
I always thought, okay, this is such a closed scene, you know, it's like for people who really know music. Like, this is the vinyl, you know, it's like this holy grail. And but people are actually nice, it turns out, and people tell you what tools they use, you know, like for instance, I learned about this infinite catalog, which is a system for calculating royalties. And I signed up for it, and I don't use it much, but it's a good one. And I also learned it from like a different label owners, right? So it's very important to remember that like you start a label, it's not just you releasing the music, but you also have to make some deal with the artists that you work with, right? And you have to pay them a thing that is called royalties, and you have to calculate them. I am very late always with this. It's like I always kind of, it's the last thing I think about. It's always like, okay, we have music, we have artwork, we release the music. Great, it's out there. Then we try to do some promo, but then you kind of, because of all of this hassle, you might forget that you actually have an artist that you're responsible for. And it's very, very important because it's the music out there. And you have to calculate the royalties that you pay them. And you have to keep this all in mind. And you have to follow up like with your distributors, with the press and so on and so forth. And yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
It's interesting that you mentioned this tool because it's actually one of the practical problems that I face. You know, when I started the label, I think initially I had this maybe erroneous idea in mind that, you know, like when I approach some artists and I propose to them to release music, and like with a couple of Rhythm Bureau releases, I actually thought that, hey, I'm gonna release this on vinyl, and that alone is enough to justify your participation, right? So with the latest release, like I know this is terrible, right? So but with the latest releases, I'm trying to pay all the artists, but the way I approach it now, like I try to make it a fixed fee kind of thing, and the reason for that is I'm explaining, hey, I'm using so many different selling channels, you know, like I have a distributor, I have Bandcamp, I have digital distribution through the same distributor, Triple Vision, that does vinyl for us. And then I'm also selling copies here locally in Ukraine, you know, and to calculate royalties for that is a real pain in the ass. So, like, does that service get integrated with all the different platforms, right?
Yes, it's an amazing service. And I also heard people now using ChatGPT really successfully, kind of like making their customized sheets for that. And some people are just great with Google Sheets and they love calculating things, not me. But Infinite Catalog is a small tool. Like I honestly haven't used it that much as I should, but it's so nice. It's like it integrates all the platforms, including like your distribution, Bandcamp, all of your streaming platforms as well. And streaming platforms, you know, they are the worst because this is where people just like get ripped off. And I mean, like it's better not to use them, but still, we distribute on Spotify, Apple Music, and so on. And so Infinite Catalog, it collects all of this data. So it's basically a lot of Google Sheets, which like, you know, have a nice interface. And what is like just in general for you guys to also to understand how we, for instance, how we do this, because when you release on a label, like you have a lot of costs, right? So it's mastering, then it's producing the artwork, then you actually make the production, which is like for one record is up like from 3K to more, depending on how many copies you have. So this is all the expenses that you have, right? So how we do it is we have royalties is what you earn from music, right? Like after all of this costs, what we do is we calculate everything we've spent and that we keep spending, like all the subscriptions, and what is earned on top of it, we divide by 50-50. So we earn the 50% and the artists get 50. I think from our records, very few artists got like anything on after they release their music because the expenses are so high. But this platform, for instance, it really allows you to track everything, and the artists have the access to the platform as well, so they see it very transparently. I mean, I'm like talking like the ambassador of the platform, but I'm not. They also like they're small, they show a demo, and they also started with like Bandcamp, so they're really industry people. So it's a really cool tool.
No, I think it's very cool that you mentioned it because like I haven't heard about it.
That's how I heard about this as well in some talk. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it's also important because I also kind of transitioned in my approach regarding loyalties, right? So I think it's really important to give something to the artist, because at the end of the day, if it wasn't for the artist to produce this music, right? Like you wouldn't have anything to release in the first place. And sometimes it's even like, it's not that much financially, but still it's kind of a psychological support. Even if you give them just a small fee, like it's still valuable, right? So like I think every label has to think about rewarding the artist.
Yeah, we also we give a small fee at the beginning that is not calculated from anything. But like when before I used to work for a label, I would hear this like, yeah, label really ripped me off. Label doesn't respond to me. You hear the stories in the underground, but also you hear this like with big stars. It's like the label. It really like it's a huge industry as well. When big artists sign to big labels, and it's like we heard from a lot of independent artists as well that they like really complain about the label doesn't respond to them and they don't know what's going on. So but also honestly from the side of a label management, I know how it can get like so messy and you have so many things going on, so you don't reply sometimes. But I think it's very important, like when you decide to run a label, that you have to like reply to the artists and you have to tell them what's going on. You have to have your timeline, and if something is not happening, you have to like keep talking to them, because people are very sensitive about their music, which I understand. Like I would be the same. But also I think like it's nice to reward, yes, but I think when you show transparently how much you're spending, like what your spendings are and where you're investing, I think they also really understand, because it's also then, but it cannot be just like, yeah, it's just for your visibility, thank you. It cannot be this. It has to be kind of a process where you show what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think it's important that even if there's no money around, like you said, that to be transparent and to communicate with them and show them that you're actually aware of this and that you care about this. But sometimes there is nothing you can pay. But I think a lot of artists value this more, that they are feeling seen and heard, than getting paid, and just have a nice process as well. I think that's important as well. Like from planning to record to release the record, that there is really like constant communication and like updating them on all the points. And yeah, what we do is, because we're not on any streaming platforms, is that we just share the Bandcamp sales after all our expenses, and that works pretty fine. Unless we have remixers, then we offer a small fee in the beginning.
In my opinion, and like I'm not forcing that on anybody, just expressing my thoughts, right? So streaming platforms, I know that from the standpoint of getting royalties, like it's really crappy, right? Because they are kind of earning money, but like they're paying almost nothing to the artists. But at the same time, like at the end of the day, most of the people out there, they use streaming platforms to discover music, right? So it's still in a way an instrument to get your music out there and get it actually, to make it available to everybody, right? So how do you approach that? Like, do you, like for you, Dennis, particular, right? Do you think you can change your opinion on that with time, or like?
I mean, we had our music on streaming platforms, but at some point we just have to be realistic that this is not working out. And also, especially with Spotify, after they started to invest in this AI war tools, whatever it was, then that's when we decided to take our music off, because it was just not worth it, I think. And I mean, I can be transparent about this. When we were on streaming platforms, there were maybe 30 euros a year.
Same.
Like for the whole catalog, and I think that's not worth it. I think I'm not really sure, but I think how it really works is that once you make it into a playlist of techno or whatever, then there might be a reach. But maybe I'm naive or wrong, but I still feel like that people within our scene still are so curious enough that they are gonna dig for music as well, and that eventually it might end up.
I mean, if I also same, like if we had a possibility now to make the kind of selling more sustainable, which we want to do, I would take down music from Spotify and Apple Music. I think it's a shame. Like it's is such a big conspiracy, like in such a scheme for. I mean, I think it's like disgrace for artists what the streaming platforms do. And I would like to take it down as well. But also, like it's there are different things. Is like I have some artists reaching out to me that were in compilations and asking like great, like keep it on Bandcamp, everything, but just take it out from Spotify. I understand this really, like but also, it's like if a track gets to a big techno mixtape, how is the playlist, yeah, it will become popular, but it will not increase your sales, but it's also kind of like, okay, if for an artist it's really important to be played in the playlists and have big numbers on Spotify is one thing, but like if they want their music to be played in underground parties because they purchased as a file from Bandcamp is different. I don't have enough experience with this yet, but I just know that like I have a really like filthy feeling about Spotify. Yeah.
I have a very naive question to both of you. So, do you think it is still feasible to make a living out of releasing music on underground labels nowadays?
No.
No.
Okay, so this is where, like, I had the same conclusion, and honestly, but I think this is where this part comes together. Like, I mean, Spotify, I know about this background that you're talking about, and like the ethical question being applicable here, right? But I think, like, since there is no possibility to make a living out of releasing music, like in a way the releasing music is a kind of a gateway for you to monetize on something different, right? But like without releasing music you cannot actually put this in practice, like get more gigs, for instance, or something like that, right? So I mean, Dennis, you don't release your music, right? So like but
I'm not producing music.
okay, yeah, but like it's kind of a unique situation where you can still make it as a DJ internationally without releasing music, right? With Agonist, it's a kind of a different thing, right?
Agonist produces music, yeah. And I guess with labels or collectives or DJs, whatever, producers, I guess it's always a mix that makes a difference, like being it releasing music or organizing events or parties or club nights or building a community in your local scene. I think that's something that makes a big difference if you're seen or not as well, and if you wanna play live, play out, or yeah. I mean, a lot of producers also don't DJ, so and only play live, and I think these people definitely need to be seen more as well, and deserve to make a living if they're constantly releasing music as well. So yeah, obviously this helped shape my career as well, that I was able to release other people's music as well. But I guess it was also a mix of things.
Yeah, I think for me, because I don't play. I mean, I have my own DJ world going on. It's like I have friends. We like to play like baile funk. Like we have a thing going on there, but it has nothing to do with our label. So my living is based on the label work, but definitely not my like kind of a DJ career is based on this, or any artistic career, because my own artistic career is writing. So it's a lot of mixture of things. But from what I see, the best thing of making money in our scene is really building collectives and your own events. I think this is the best. And then releasing music becomes kind of like a sophisticated thing around it, and it's gives you this like a framework. But also, I mean, it really shapes your taste when you start listening to so much music, that like to the amount of music when you have to release, you listen also differently. So it's nice. And for instance, in our case, we always try to make a story as well. So because of how we approach music, it's not just tracks and an artwork. It's always a different cover. It's always like a storytelling in the, not just in the press release, but how the music is written. Like the latest release on vinyl that we had was this Transition Territory, and it's about like Nastya Vohan and Face Fatale traveling to Kyiv over this years of full-scale invasion, like taking a lot of trains and kind of like getting into this train mantra. And we spoke about this with them, you know, and they share friendship. So we're like, okay, what about like connecting this and making something about this? So it's about the story. But from people that I see like being that inspire me and inspire my vision, like for instance, like Mala Junta, you know, we are good friends with them, or like Life from Earth. It's a bit more commercial project, but still, like I think it's a really good example. Like Mama Snake things, you know, like it's really a lot about like Basiania, also really good friends of ours. Is really, you know them because they are like this strong crew, you know, and you know they like come in as a crowd, you know, they hang out together, they like really listen to each other's music, they play each other's music, they repost each other's music, and it's very genuine. And I think this is where you can really become like a strong community that will support your label but also can support you money wise. Yeah.
It's actually interesting because you partly answered the question that I was about to ask. Thank you for that. Like the question was actually, you know, probably the biggest challenge when you're launching the label is to get the core audience that would support and help the label survive, right? But getting back to your sentiment here, so do you think that in order to be successful as a label, you also need to have kind of a platform of a different shape to support it, right? Like be it like a club community or whatever.
I think there's so much these days, like there's so much content, what we call content, right? It can be anything that you need like a voice, you need a story, and it's I mean it's like used a lot in advertising, of course, but I think we're talking about very genuine things here. And yeah, you just I don't even know anyone right now, like from our surrounding, who would be like, oh, I just do a label and I don't have my audience, or like I don't have a message, you know? So maybe if it's like if I were releasing some commercial hip hop or something, that would be maybe different, like just about making money. But I think that in our world, it's all about like you start with friends and there are friends making music. And I don't know, it's like a really, really strong connections. If I like add a little bit, like I work with, completely different topic, but I just finishing like a documentary with friends about Principe Records, which is a record label in Lisbon, and it's about like batida music, which is like this Angolan Portuguese music, and it's like all about like having these people who like to release it, and you listen, and then you find it, and then friends come to the parties. And I think this is like the most organic and the best thing ever. Also nowadays, a lot of people cannot really make it with just releasing music, so they make merch, they make products, they make items. I think it's totally fine. I think so. I know that not all the music purists support this.
Items as in merchandise.
Yeah, exactly. Like statues or like some key the keychains and stuff like this. But I think it's so nice, like when you really involve other people and you make your voice out of it. Yeah. So I think you need a community, but also I cannot imagine nowadays someone like from our scene who would not realize that, you know?
Yeah, I think it's definitely community building. Yeah. Have good people around you, people that support you, but also give back a lot and not just do a one-man show or whatever.
How important it is, in your opinion, to have this like local community backing you up? Because like for Rhythm Bureau, I think like nowadays I'm selling probably 1/4 or 1/3 of the records in Ukraine, right? And the rest is distributed internationally over time. Like, what is the ratio for you? And like, do you think it is hypothetically possible to just make it internationally without making it locally first?
I think the local community is probably one of the most important things. I guess maybe it depends also what region you're from. obviously, if you're from London or Berlin or any other big cities in the world, I think it's maybe a little bit of a different story, but I can just tell from our perspective coming from Basel, which is like a 200,000 capacity population, thank you, city. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously it was so important for us to have all these people and friends around, because yeah, you start doing parties, you want people to come, you want maybe people to feel inspired after they visited one of your events or heard you play or whatever. And I think without them, we wouldn't be here or where we are right now. So I think this is very important, yeah, to not forget about where you're coming from and what your roots are and stuff.
I think so too. I think, for instance, Kyiv is an extremely community-based city, and people here like really like support their community. I love it. I've lived in Berlin for like 14 years or something like this. I kind of like made myself into this whole music industry there, and like coming back to Kyiv for this project is really nice, because it's really like a different way of support, different way of people wanting to contribute, be a part of it. It's really nice. And also, like in our case, again, like I'll repeat, the label started differently because it started as a project of the club, and it also had a bit of this like Berlin flavor to it, because there were Berlin artists released on it and stuff. But now we are it's really like the goal of us to bring it back to Kyiv more, and to know people that like, so that people know, okay, we are here, we release music, reach out to us, and we will listen to it. And yeah. So community, I think, is everything. I love it.
I feel like you can really feel this in Kyiv. Yeah, yeah. There is no sense of like, yeah, it just feels like everyone's helping each other.
But also
in a
there's this
sense.
kind
I
of
mean,
like,
obviously that's
yeah, there's
from
like
outside,
tiny
but, like,
beefs between different communities, but it's also so nice, because people care. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice.
and depending on where you're from, you have to do something in order to even get recognized, because especially all these big cities, they tend to just look at themselves and not see what's actually around.
I think like it's kind of an off-top thing, but it's interesting that you mentioned here, like like different parts of community having beefs with each other. I think in case of Kyiv, like when the full-scale war broke out, regardless of any like conflicts or beefs that used to exist before, everybody kind of came together and started working together on certain initiatives. And I think that's also a sign of being a mature society in the first place, right? Because you kind of prioritize the most important things over some silly, childish beefs that you may have had before. All right, I think we're almost an hour into this thing, so I'll probably ask the last question, and then we'll give the audience a chance to ask questions as well. So let's talk more about the monetization aspect, because I just want to kind of set a benchmark for people who are maybe thinking about launching the label, especially the vinyl label, like to give them the idea of how much it takes financially, right? So. For Rhythm Bureau, for instance, like we're pressing 300 records for every release. I think like the manufacturing alone is like 1,500 euros. And then you have to invest into mastering, which is, depending on who does it for you, like, is it a friend or not? Then the artwork, which may also take a lot of money, actually. And then if you need to get involved into the promotional stuff, like, I miss those days when resources like Resident Advisor would just support underground releases. Like that's not the case anymore, and on many occasions you need to actually pay money, and like it's ridiculous to me that you actually need to pay money for the mail out of your release to be delivered for free to other DJs, right? So like it's kind of insane to me. So like, I mean, releasing vinyl is not cheap. That's the bottom line. So Do you have any advice on how to be more cost efficient, maybe, or maybe to find some compromises that would help you with releasing stuff on your label?
Yeah, for us, how we were able to start was we were very privileged that we could just organize our parties in a kind of small club in Basel, which were so successful in a sense that we were able to pay the first release, and after that, kind of because we always sold out, which means that you break even, you had like already kind of money for the next one. But yeah, it's really expensive, but also I guess it depends on are you doing a full cover inside out, whatever artwork, are you pressing 180, are you using what kind of inner sleeves you're using. I feel like that's all things you can definitely save money on. And yeah, with marketing or whatever as well, it depends. There are different tools. Meanwhile, the only thing we do is we send out promos via No More Words, which helps a bit. It's like this website that DJs or industry people, whatever, get a login, and then every week there are yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
Fat Drop,
I think
kind of.
it's run by Delsin, so
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
run by
their side
Delsin.
project.
Exactly. But also, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because you have some really like successful names on this on all these websites that just get music for free, and I don't know, why not making kind of a shop out of it that you get exclusive access for a few weeks earlier or whatever, but you still have to pay something. I don't know, that was just something I was thinking about it lately because yeah, it's just free available. So like you mentioned, it's kind of, I don't know. But then what I think it doesn't make a big difference anymore if you're pressing 200 or 500 in terms of like price per piece. So yeah, I think it's mostly what kind of artwork and inner sleeves and all the kind of these things you're using where you could save money.
You want to talk about it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like when somebody is thinking, right, to start a label, you have to think, okay, do I want a digital label only or a vinyl as well, right? So because you have these options, you can have only digital, and then you have really like very few costs, such as mastering and artwork. But if you're doing this with friends, you have almost no costs, right? Then there is a whole vinyl market, which is very niche, but it's popular, but it's very niche still. So you have to think of like, okay, if you want the vinyl so much, why do you want it? You have to understand like what's your purpose with this, right? If you decide you want the vinyl, there are more and more pressing plants in Europe. In Ukraine, right now there is no one, right?
Yeah, and I think even like it's important to mention, even if there was one, still like if you want to distribute records internationally,
to
it's
bring
more
them outside,
convenient
yeah.
to press them in the European Union.
Exactly,
to
yeah.
avoid, like,
So you have to like you need an investment. Let's say you need, if you think in this, you need like 5,000 euros, right? Like just to start with, or like you can make it happen for 3, but still, you have to find a printing plant, and there are many now. And as people who print records, they will give you an advice on this. It's not a problem. But then there is like for us, for instance, in Ukraine, right? You have to you press them to bring them in Ukraine. You need to like bring them yourself or ask friends, because otherwise you need to pay customs when you like send them with Nova Poshta. So you have to do this. If you have to deliver them to other shops around. So it will be like Dennis did at the beginning. You either contact the shops, say, okay, we have this record, or maybe you have friends in different cities that will bring your record to the store. So you have to distribute. You have to think about this as well. So you have to think of all these steps. But also, like, if you think you're so passionate about having a vinyl, like you can make it happen as well. It just you have to think what you were gonna do about it afterwards. yeah, so these are the things you have to think about, like the mail out. I wanted actually to ask you because we haven't been using it. We just send it to like press and like some DJs that we know, but I would like to use it from now on as well. So mail out for everyone is that you deliver your tracks to a platform that does only like distribution to like a VIP list, so to say, like DJs and like press maybe, and they get a link and they get these tracks, all of this music for free. So it means they will have your files for free. They can play these files at the parties, so they will not go and buy music, but your music will be heard somewhere. So like, can you maybe tell us more about this? You have more experience.
Yeah, so what we did in the beginning, it was just we were collecting just like every emails we got from DJs, label people, industry people, whatever, and then we did the mail out by ourselves, which was kind of funny as well. Yeah, exactly. Like we have this is our upcoming release, blah blah blah, whatever, and just sent a link to download or whatever. And then at some point we switched to Delsi's No More Words. Yeah. And then you just pay them a little fee, and then it's online maybe for. Usually you do it. We always do it when we receive the test pressing of the 12-inch, and if we confirm it, then we send out the promo. So some people have it a little bit earlier. No more words.
No more words.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually also use it sometimes, like not for every release, but I think like it helps in terms of getting your brand recognized, you know, and also to push the artist names because like in terms of exposure, but it doesn't give you anything in terms of sales, I guess, right? So you need to be aware of that. Like
I was gonna say, because I was thinking about this, because obviously you reach an audience with this, but it's a very specific. It's basically just DJs that play it, and I don't know, but most of the DJs, they dig through music anyway, so I'm just actually thinking about, is it really doing something for your release in a sense that you're getting maybe some more recognition, like the artist getting more recognition, or not? You know what I mean?
I have a little tip that is like a trick, but I came up with this only now, and I'm really ashamed to say it.
Just then.
Just like with the last release, I mean, didn't bring as much success, but still, like when you send someone, okay, on Bandcamp you can have you can do promo codes, right? So like a link and a promo code for a person who can download music. So if you have like friends who can download it, then on like the main page of the release, you will be like supported by like more people. You know, so if people download it, even if with a download code, they don't pay for it, then still like it will look better for your page.
yeah, actually, Vera encouraged me to do that for Rhythm Bureau.
Yeah?
But I'm too lazy to do that.
But I mean, but who encouraged you?
Vera.
Vera. But yes, I mean, but I just realized, I mean, I'm really like ashamed. So it's secret information that I didn't realize this. But it's because sometimes I look like, for me as a person who checks like what releases are actually popular, like I see, okay, oh, supported by so many people. But then like if somebody downloads it even for free from Bandcamp, it will be also supported by them and it will look better. So I think if you do like this promo per hand, sending out emails, do this.
But you know that actually a person can use the download code and untick the box.
But they don't do it. I mean, you have to be very like evil to do it. Like, why would you do
It's
it?
a bit evil.
Yeah, like
It's kind of fun.
yeah.
But also, I don't know. Sometimes it's
do this?
from a DJ's perspective. When you see when you discover something on Bandcamp and like nobody bought it,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, that's nice.
Okay.
But then if you see like a big list of people, you're like, I don't know.
No, but maybe for a DJ, but like yeah,
For a label
yeah.
perspective,
yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh, they sold something.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're doing so well. Yeah, but I mean, if I think for people who are starting and to like see that okay, your release not like been bought by one person, but by 12, I think it's already nice. Really.
Yeah, it does something.
Yeah.
I think another important aspect, and this is something that I learned from my experience, of running the label, is that longevity actually matters. So like if you do it long enough and if you release more records, so like now I have how many, like 12 releases that are already out, and almost all of them are sold out everywhere, right? And this has taken me like 10 releases to reach this. So like with every new release, it also draws attention to some of the previous records you released. And also when you use Bandcamp and there's an opportunity to download the entire discography with the discount, it actually helps, right? So if you I just want to mention this for people not to get discouraged by not selling out the first record or the second record or the third record. You will make it there. You just need more time, and you need to be patient about it. With more records out, and especially like on different platforms, and Bandcamp actually helps a lot. It's getting easier for you to get sold out releases.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that. One way is also that you can reach out to distributions or some record shops. They offer like a DNP deal, P&D deal. Sorry, that's production and distribution. So I think there are a lot of people that can't afford to get a release done, but have amazing music around, and maybe that could be a way as well. So what they do is basically pay for your release and then distribute it as well, and you get like a little payment for each record that you sold. So that could be, I know some people that do that, and seems pretty effective as well.
I also heard about this model being used, but I think it's difficult to get it when you're just an up and coming artist, because for a distributor, they're also not always willing to invest into projects. So, sometimes like again, you need patience. You need to be very thorough with your planning. You need to commit to something that you will do for a long time before the results start coming in, basically.
And I think it's also totally fine to just use or start with digital releases only. There's nothing wrong about it, and you can always also re-release a digital release on vinyl for the first time or whatever. I think that's totally fine as well, because I think Bandcamp for this is really cool. Like once you have an audience and some reach, you can actually sell a lot of music.
I also had something in mind. Yeah, what I would also suggest is like if you're thinking of a label, think ahead a little bit of like 4 to 5 releases, because it's like when you just have one idea in mind and you want to start a label, I think it's not enough. You need to build up a little bit, and you need to learn to plan a lot of things at the same time. Yeah.
I can relate to that. I actually thought about it recently that releasing one record a year is kind of a mess, because you're not too frequent. Like you're not frequent enough to get your like brand recognized. You need to be more persistent with that. So like I would say at least 2, not necessarily vinyl records, but like at least 2 releases. Like in best case scenario, more than that, and that helps you reinforce your image of a label more efficiently, I think.
But also, I feel like it really depends. Sometimes you just don't have music around that you really want to release. I don't know if we've found ourselves in this situation right now where we have idea, but also you want to be like 100% sure to put something out and not rush anything. Like we had years where we had 3 to 4 releases, and then we had years where we only had 1.
Yeah.
So, but it's definitely nicer and better to plan a bit of ahead. But just what I'm trying to say is sometimes you can't plan it. Yeah.
All right. I think we can answer questions from the audience if there are any. Like, let us know. That's okay if you don't have anything. Yeah. I think there is one. Yeah.
I'm interested if an artist wants to have some feel to experiment as a label, what are the ways to save yourself? Like, if it flops, especially if your direction is physical distribution with evading streaming platforms, like when you have much bigger spans.
Do you mean like if you commissioned a release and the artist delivered bad music or something? No.
No, if he wants to experiment and if audience won't feel it, like.
You mean if the album will be too experimental and the
Yeah,
audience
yeah,
will
yeah.
not like it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think as like us, for instance, we work with an artist like during the production as well, right? So we kind of try to direct them. I mean, we are an experimental label, so it gets experimental. But I think if you have a specific direction of your music on the label and you are a curator, you curate, so you can direct a little bit so that, so that it's not something completely out of your label spectrum, but you can never be sure.
No, I think I didn't understand the question correctly.
Yeah, it's kind of like if an artist submits you music that is like you thought it will be one kind of music, but it's way more experimental than you thought, and your audience will not like it. Like if you receive music from the artist, but you don't like it. Do you tell them to remake it, like to rework it or not?
I think it actually depends. It's a very subjective thing, like to call something too experimental or like I don't know. Like I think there has to be like the music has to resonate between like the artist and the label.
Yeah.
Because when I get sent demos and I'm really bad at replying to emails, I have to admit, but like I try to do that. And sometimes I will provide a feedback on. I mean, I like that part. Maybe I would recommend to make it more DJ friendly in a way. Like I don't have the opportunity to release it, but let's keep in touch. But sometimes I would get sent a demo of like a Shrantz track or whatever, and like it's just do you really think that a Shrantz record will be released on Rhythm Bureau? I think like it's kind of arrogant thing to send this in the first place. So like it actually depends on circumstances. If you send it to the right label that actually is known for the same kind of music, I think nothing prevents you from being released. Like you, at least you can try. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Like from our perspective, when we get a demo sent and we feel like it's like amazing and really fits, then we're not gonna give feedback and say it's too experimental because we think we're just gonna do it. But and the other way around kind of as well, like if we reach out to an artist and ask if they down for a release and they send us stuff, then I find it really weird to like give feedback and be like, oh, obviously you give a little bit feedback, but also you want to keep the structure of the tracks they send as original as possible. So I think it's important to send it to the right labels that you feel like fits your music.
Okay, and only label is part of this like ranking the release, or you are trying to maybe play it at some events, like check the waters. Maybe it's experimental, but you don't know what you feel about it.
Yeah, I think let's say if somebody's sending us music and we feel like it's really interesting music, obviously I'm gonna play it first to see, or Dominic or whoever within that label to see if it's, or what is it actually doing. So I guess that's also a part of it. But then there might be bigger labels that think differently, but that they also have the economical part in mind, and that there might be a A&R or whatever, that a person that would decide this. But then there is also the part where they would think about if it's actually gonna sell or not. So I guess it really depends on the size of the label.
I have this example, like on the next project on my label that I'm releasing soon in a couple of months. There's going to be one track by the Ukrainian producer like which I've played for like last 6 or 7 years. So like I actually played it a lot, and I think it was kind of only I played it, and then the producer himself, right? But and it took me 6 to 7 years to actually release it. So like if it's the right fit, if it matches the label sound, it may not be an immediate reward, but still, like I think also if a DJ runs the label, then it's kind of an obvious thing that you need to test it out on the dance floor first. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question about the feedback that you give, right? I also don't always answer all the demo emails because sometimes I really like don't know what to say because I find it really bad, for instance, right? Sometimes it's like a really well produced techno and I say, okay, it doesn't fit us, but it's cool, like try other labels, right? But how do you respond to this? Because I don't know sometimes.
I feel like when it's a creative issue, we don't give feedback because that's what they've thought about while producing it. But how we work is, I mean, I have no idea, but but like no idea about the technical aspect. This is really Dominic's part, and I feel like he has really good ears on that. And when we give feedback, it's mostly on like technical stuff that maybe there might be elements too loud or whatever it be. So on this we give just honest feedback, but not on the like creative part of like arrangement or something.
But then do you say that, okay, this is not for us? Do you still reply like saying this is not for us, but thanks for sending?
Or like if there is a reason, oh no, we
Don't like it. Like,
oh if we don't like it, no, then we just say we're not, that's not what we are looking for at the moment.
I see.
We try to reply to every email, yeah.
I have to admit, sometimes I just don't reply because I'm just, swamped under a number of tasks at the moment. So like I just forget, and I wish that wasn't the case, but it is the case, unfortunately. But when I get to it and I actually listen to the demo, again, it depends. I may not be able to release something, or I may not like it enough to release it on the label. But if I think it's still quality music, I'm trying to give feedback because it also I think it's important to get the psychological support to a person. Maybe you won't release their music, but it's still you give them attention, and maybe that helps them get the confidence to contact the next label, which would be a better match, right? But again, coming back to some particular examples, if you get sent like, I don't know, organic house or like, I don't know, melodic techno or whatever, which is not what my label is doing, like, why do you expect an answer from me? Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think there are a lot of people that just send the same email to, and you can look and like sense that, and yeah, then you might not, or
Yeah.
we might not reply.
Also, yeah.
I think there is great music that
Yeah.
has been sent to us that is also just fun to DJ, or like really music that we would DJ, but not necessarily.
Do you tell people like we're gonna DJ your music or not? Because it's kind of like, it's not released. They don't know it's out there, but it's being played somewhere.
Like if we receive music
Yeah.
and we think it's really nice and we would like to play this,
Yeah.
then we tell them.
Tell them, yeah, okay.
But we don't ask like for downloads, but like
No,
we would say,
yeah.
hey, this is something we would
Play.
necessarily not release, but like play in our sets, and most of the times they
Of course,
really appreciate that and send the music then.
And yeah, about this feedback, I also noticed because sometimes I kind of like help artists to send things to other labels as well that fit their music as well. It really gives so much encouragement when they see that it was played on SoundCloud, like in a private playlist, more times, and then somebody actually replies to kind of understand that there is someone on the other side of this darkness. It really helps, and it's really nice. Yeah, but also like from like sometimes I also kind of give this lecture on communication with the press and with labels. I always say that like if you're sending something to someone, make sure that you know where you're sending it, and probably like mention that, for instance, like I really loved your release of this artist, of this, and I think that I'm going into a kind of that direction as well, and I think that's why it's a good fit. I mean, of course, if you're an artist who's sending to like 300 labels, maybe you won't have time for this, but I think it makes so much sense to come up with a bit more personal approach to this, because people will know that you know their catalog, and it makes a big difference. Yeah, I would suggest this to someone who wants to release on labels.
Hello, everyone. Is it working? I think, yeah. Firstly, I want to deeply thank you for today's panel discussion. For me, this discussion opened my eyes to like label work, because I've never encountered this and I've never met this practice before, and I don't know anything about it. And my question will be, I think, interesting, because in the world of contemporary art, there is a huge movement of deinstitutionalization. I think I messed up the word. Deinstitutionalization, yes, when the artist deliberately chooses not to work with the gallery or with an institution because they don't want to confront, they don't want to condone, they want to produce their own art, especially when it's this accessible. Nowadays, you can just do your work on social media and you'll get noticed anyways. Have you noticed such a trend in the electronic music work? And what do you do to make artists interested in your label, and how do you work with them, like when it comes to making some changes in their projects? And what is your approach in working with artists that don't want to work with institutions and that don't want to condone? Because electronic music is all about freedom and freedom of choice and being free. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, really good question. I think we as labels or institutions have to live with that. That it's their free will. I can tell from our history, not that we are necessarily an institution in that sense, but we had artists that said no to releases, to release on our label, just because they wanted to release their own music on their labels or concentrate or on very few labels that they've already worked with. And yeah, at first you're obviously taking it personal, but also once you reflect on it, it's also totally fine and understandable. And that's also actually nice of these artists to be honest and true to themselves.
I just had this instant, actually, really recently. There is an artist who we've really wanted to release, and she wanted to release with us, and it's like a really big friend of the community and of the label as well, and it really is a great fit. And we were working on this release already, like we've been working. And then there were some conditions from our side, like for instance, I found it not suitable for a vinyl because it would be way too expensive for this specific vinyl, and it's not something that would really sell. So we didn't want to do the vinyl, but this artist really, like, that was her vision. I want the vinyl, like, and then she's like, okay, I'm gonna part ways with you. And, if we were a more serious institution or organization, we would have had already the contract where I would say, okay, you have to release with us, and you would like go after this because there was already effort invested in this. But we are like, I from a personal perspective, I totally understand, I respect that, but it's it's never nice to have like kind of your effort just not taken into account. Also, if you work with someone where you are like where you have to report, if I had to like report to a boss or my own manager and explain why it didn't happen, why I didn't sign a contract before, that would be a problem. But in our case, it isn't. Another thing, like from another perspective, there is like less trust to institutions. You can see more and more independent artists also, like when they get a little bit more of a success, especially in like community wise, they start their own label as well because they understand how to do it. and they just started and they release their music because they have enough audience to sell this music as well. And that I see this more and more, and I feel like sometimes like, why do you want your own label? Like, it's so much work, it's so much easier to release with someone, but they have enough material to release and they do it. Yeah.
I also had cases when somebody would turn down my proposal to release music, or even wouldn't reply to my request, which is, I mean, like, obviously nobody likes not being replied to or your proposal being turned down, but at the end of the day, like, you cannot be guaranteed everything that you want, right? So I think it is also important to be respectful towards other people, because you may not know about like what the background was for their like them turning down your request or them not replying. Maybe there was a personal issue or whatever. You just need to be, if something doesn't work out, that doesn't mean that another person is bad or that you did something wrong. Like, sometimes things are just not working out. That's it.
Yeah, and I think in general, like becoming more professional also means to take things less and less personally. Like I learned this because I'm a kind of person, I take everything very personally, and I also like I get fixated on specific ideas that I want this kind of release, I want this person. I think it fits so well, but you should have like more ideas in the making, and you should plan them. And if something falls out, you have a next one coming up. And I think it's like a really big thing in this kind of fields where you kind of everybody's friends but also colleagues, and here's some money involved, some performance possibilities and so on, to keep a boundary, and also like to try to not take everything personally because it will destroy you. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
All right. So thank you. Hope you hear me well. So first thing to mention is that my question will be probably stupid and maybe even abstract, but still I will use my that possibility. So, in my humble opinion, we live in the era when the music and generally, well, every manifestation of art are degrading. It's called Kali Yuga in Indian mythology and Indian religion, if I'm not mistaken. So, my question will be, well, how to combine that originality, success for the general, well, artists in Ukraine and in general in Europe. So let's just imagine that we have young artists that has like some brilliant idea. It has some concept. It has, when he's luckily enough, some just brilliant crew. So what are the first step to be not only heard, but also to be, well, dare I say, adored and successful in these circumstances? Thank you.
If I understood your question correctly, my initial response would be, I think it depends on your definition of success. Because, I've had people around me, like friends, ex-collaborators, whatever, whose definition of success is way different, right? So for some people, and I think myself included, right? So I would consider success to be when you're doing what is true for yourself and you're getting recognized for that. If you're not being true about yourself and like getting money out of it, I think it's selling out, but it's very subjective, right? Like, to another person, and I'm not going to name specific names, but I know people for whom like they kind of deviated from their original style and creativity to adhere to what was actually more common on the market, and they became like super successful financially, and I'm pretty sure they're happy about it. Like, I personally wouldn't be happy in this position. So again, it depends on what you perceive success to be in the end.
Yeah, I think it's good. Like in your case, I don't think it's a stupid question, first of all, but I think it's really important to look at who you think you adore, right? Like, and why do you adore them? And the definition again of success, is it fame? Is it that you earn money from what you do? Or is it that you like have like really cool people around you, but they are like 10 people, you know? So I think you have to be honest with this definition of success. I've always also seen people who started like around my time and now they are like this big stage DJs, very Instagrammable, like it's all about Instagram. And I think it's really like, it's very tough to do it, but I also see this as like a choice of a person to do it. So I think you have to see what's success for you. And I always try to like, it's very hard not to compare yourself to other people. It's like super, super hard. But then also like you can have some examples of what you think is successful to you and try to analyze what to do with it. But I mean, like if you want to be famous, not you, but like a person wants to be famous, there are, you know, managers for this who take you up and like say, okay, like we need so many Instagram followers, we need so many gigs, we need da. But that's a very one way to be successful. That's my way to answer this question.
Yeah, also nothing to add.
Thanks.
I think we're way over time. I'm really sorry. Yeah, we will finish now. But thank you very much for attending.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.